Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of the Jaded Mechanic podcast. It's spring is in the air, and I'm sitting here with a very new friend of mine, Miss Liz Tate. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
We were just talking before we got on. I had a nice 2-hour conversation with my brother, Lucas Underwood, which is always a very good conversation. He's like you, he just got back from Vision. And yet we didn't really talk too much about that. But we just shared kind of where we're going forward with the podcast and stuff like that. We're up over 100 episodes now for here on the Jaded Mechanic, which is like, to me, it's just like, I can't believe it's been 100 episodes. Like, we're coming on to a lot, like more than a year and a half now. And I'm like, wow, where did the time go? And you reached out to me and said, hey, I'm going to be going to Vision. And I went, that's pretty cool. So let's kind of hear Liz's story about, what do you do? Where do you work? Like, what do you love about it? What do you hate about the Jaded Mechanic kind of stuff, Liz?
All right. Well, actually, I found your podcast because the title Jaded Mechanic definitely resonated with me about a year ago.
Yeah.
I currently, I'm a partner in Level 5 Drive. We're an ADOS calibration company, so we're pretty much all of that fun stuff. And we also get into a lot of diagnostics with that, and sometimes a few SRS issues. And whatever happens, the shop's like, hey, we've got this issue. You can take a look at it while it's there. It's like, yeah, all right. So that gets really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been a licensed technician up here in Canada for about, I think, 14 years.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And where are you in Canada?
Exactly. I am in Southern Ontario, so like St. Catharines, Niagara Falls area.
We're practically neighbors. I'm in
right?
Kingston. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm in Kingston, home of the Tragically Hip and Dan Aykroyd and, all the other great stuff in Canada. A lot of it comes out of Bryan Adams. A lot of people don't know that.
There we go. Right.
He was born in Kingston. Yes.
Yes. So there's a Canadian national treasure right there.
Right on. So
I prefer Bryan Adams way more than
Vision,
Rush, and it's been very anti-Canadian to say so.
I have not made Vision yet. So, and we're frozen already.
Oh, yes.
Oh, listen. I'm going to go out right on the limb right now. Oh, you're back.
Yes, I was going to say. I was just typing, just letting you know that we're having some issues here.
Now, I heard you say Rush, which is probably why it caused the electrical problem. Because, and if you happen to not like Rush, you and I are already off on a good foot. Because I think that like every album they'd have done would have been better if it was just an instrumental. And that's what I'll say about that. They fantastic musicians.
Yes.
But that boy can't sing a lick.
Yeah,
like he is
something about
the worst, most intrusive voice that I've ever heard in my almost 50 years of listening to music. That's one of the worst voices I've ever friggin' heard.
Yeah. There's much better Canadian bands. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I even put Nickelback ahead of Rush, and I am not a Nickelback fan.
Yeah.
So
Tea Party. I love the Tea Party.
I can't stand them either. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But we can agree on Rush, so that's okay.
Yes. So then, wow. So you do. So is that company mobile? Like you kind of.
We actually don't do anything mobile because most of the OEM repair procedures, they want flat level floors, adjustable lighting, and all of that magical stuff. So, and we can't control that because most shops have slope floors to allow for drainage. Yeah. So we actually have physical locations that we have.
Okay,
so
cool.
We'll pick up and we'll drop off to body shops or, other, business to business customers. So they don't lose a technician or anything or two people to drop a call for us. So we also get to test drive and see how everything is working. So we have a good idea of what the car is actually doing before we even touch it.
Right.
Anyway,
now, how long have you been? Go ahead, sir.
And that also allows us to test drive the car afterwards to make sure everything is still working the way it's supposed to be. But
right on. How long have you been with this company?
About, I think, 2.5 years.
Okay.
So the company itself, the main corporation, was founded right around the start of COVID, and I met them shortly after that. I was actually laid off from the shop I was working at. And one of the nice things that came out of COVID was that a lot of the big conventions in the US, they moved to online. So I could never get to them before. But because hey, look, you can pay this one fee and you get access to all of the courses. That's the coolest thing ever. So my kids are home from school. They're doing online schooling. I'm like, I'm bored. I'm like, there's only so much laundry I can mentally handle in a day. So I paid for the course, and in there was a bunch of ADOS courses. I'm like, oh, this is new. So I started like asking around. I've got a bunch of friends in dealerships and stuff. So one in particular works a lot of them. So I asked her like, hey, who in the area is doing this? She goes, nobody. She goes, but some good friends of hers are doing it up in Burlington, Ontario. So she introduced me to them, and we just, kind of took off from there. So I actually joined as a partner for their St. Catharines location. And I help out with all of the other locations that they have throughout Ontario. They also have 2 in Saskatchewan, and we're looking to expand across Canada as well.
Right. That's fantastic. Because see, we don't have in Kingston, as crazy as it sounds, we don't have anybody coming around doing that. You know what I mean? Like ADOS. ADOS is not a huge moneymaker here. It's not something that like, there's shops that do it, but it's almost like the dealerships have got it completely locked up. And I mean, we've heard that they don't always even do it right. But they're doing it, right? So
sometimes.
Yeah. So I mean, for people that are listening, and Liz and I, we kind of talked before we came on the air. You're a female working in a predominantly male dominated thing, and I'm sure that always has been not I don't want to say an obstacle. That's the wrong word. But you probably have some interesting perspectives on what that's been like. And that's by no means do we want to keep, hammering that on the head. That's like, but what's your, like, how did you get into doing this? Like as a technician? Because like, I mean, when I went to school, high school, even my high school classes, it wasn't like 50-50, you know what I mean? Like we might have had 3 girls and like 20 guys for our class. So how did you get into this? Do you have other people in the family that are techs or?
Nope, my dad and brother are both welders, and my welding is terrible. So that's the funny, like, it's awful. Like people are like, oh, I can teach anybody to weld. I'm like, they look at me like, what is wrong? I'm like, I don't even know. They're like, we don't even know what you're doing wrong. Like, we'll just, right. So it worked out for me in that regard. I just traded my welding for electrical diag, and I was happy. Mm-hmm. But how I got into it, when I was in high school, I did take auto for 1 year, but everybody in the class was more interested in blowing things up. And I'm not against that. That's great fun. But I also wanted to learn about cars. So I'm like, you know what? Right. The high school I went to was predominantly business oriented. So they shunted all of like the less academically inclined students into the trades. So like that's and it's still like that today, which is really sad. I've got stories about that because I actually helped with my local college teaching at the high school, is doing a joint credit. So cool. Yeah. But anyway, so I went off and did a bunch of other things. I actually, when I was in high school, I wanted to get into art programs. But then I kind of looked at like, how am I going to get any money? Like realistically, like I want to support myself. I looked at what they were doing for like a lot of different like design courses. I'm like, that's boring. I don't want to sit there and design business cards. Like that's not what I want to do. So I'm like, all right, so let's go do something else. So I tried a bunch of different careers. I was actually had my life insurance license, my mutual funds license. Okay. I hated it. Again, deathly boring. I'm like, I don't want to sit there on the phone all day. Like, I can't do this. Yeah. So I was actually a registered horse groom apprentice. So within Ontario, we have that because of all the racetracks. A lot of people are getting hurt. So they introduced training for that. So I was working in the industry in horses. Then that, again, like most of the money of that is not in a groom. Like, I don't want to be making minimum wage for the rest of my career. As much as I loved it, I'm like, I gotta move on. I had bought an 89 Chevy pickup truck because I also had a horse. And like, so I needed something to, haul hay and stuff like that. And the box was rotten. But my friend's husband had a 92 who blew up his transmission. So I'm looking at his truck, looking at my truck. I'm like, they're pretty much the same trucks here. So we worked out a deal. And so I started basically combining the 2 trucks to make one good truck. And as I'm doing this, I'm like, wait a second. Clearly, I'm in the wrong field because I was loving every second of fixing this truck. Yeah. And my family is a bunch of farmers and stuff. So fixing their own cars was normal. So like they weren't necessarily technicians, but they're fixing tractors. They're fixing the snowmobiles, the cars, like whatever. Very rarely anything actually went to a shop. So if I ran into a problem, it's like, hey, Dad, not a big deal. So kind of doing that, I'm like, I need to go back to school for this. But at this point, I was already in my early 20s. I'm like, no one's going to hire a girl with no automotive experience as an apprentice. So I actually went back to Niagara College, did the 2-year post-secondary program. Made a lot of great connections from that. I'm actually still friends to this day with a couple of the two professors that I had, they were part-time professors. They moved on to other things in the industry as well. But I've stayed in contact with the college. So it's actually been great for the business too, because we can work with co-op students and hire some of the apprentices that didn't necessarily want to be a technician, but want to stay in the automotive industry. So it's kind of went from there. Cool. So yeah, went from there, got licensed, and haven't looked back since. I've questioned it, but I haven't. But I've stuck with it.
Yeah, we all question it. Even yes. I was questioning it the last week. You know, Lucas and I were just talking about that. Like, how long do I keep doing this? Because, like, I'm 49, so, and I've been doing this since I was 20. So it's 29 years of, and I've jumped back and forth between heavy truck and automotive and dealership. So I mean, I've got some aches and pains and stuff like that have been legit, from like trying to pound a kingpin out of a solid axle on a Kenworth or something like that. Like I've got. So I'm sitting there saying to myself, like, how many more years can I really do this? Like, when I can go in now and I have to wear an elbow brace and I have to ice my elbow at, the end of the day, or all that kind of stuff. And that's just the elbows and shoulders. And I'm not looking for pity, but I'm looking at it going, like, how do I transition to out, So that's, we kind of had a conversation about, like, the end goal eventually is for the podcast to be financially lucrative enough that if I didn't have to work 5 days a week, I wouldn't. I would do the podcast. But then we got talking, Lucas and I, of course, and it's like, but if I wasn't doing this all day long, would the podcast still be as effective? Would I still be as relevant to it? And that's where, it may be where it's like it's in my blood and it might never get out. But when you went off to college and took those courses, that's something that, like, and I'm sure as you've networked with a lot of people too, there's sure, we all hear of like UTI and everything, but I mean, up in Canada, that is a very real path that I had a lot of myself, like I did it. A lot of my friends had to go through when we got out of high school, is you go off to community college and take this course that gets us fast tracked on the COQ or CFQ, which is, for people that are listening, you've heard us say now, she said got her license. That's where licensed skilled trade up here. So that's kind of a pretty cool thing. So how big was your graduating class when you got out of college?
I think when after the second year, I think there was only 15 of us. Yeah. And I think only 10 actually graduated that year.
Yeah. A lot of attrition, eh? When you always start. Yeah. Yeah. It's a grind for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the classes now are much bigger because they've increased the capacity of the college. So it's good in that regard. But I think there's still that retention of the industry when they get out there. I think it's the same everywhere. Like, the first year is like, they're the cheap labor. Go change the garbage, go sweep the floors. And then most of them still get, kind of, the short end of the stick. And they get tired of working in the industry. So go, if this is all it is, I was promised like, $40 an hour. Because, they don't tell them it takes years of experience to get to that level or to, be able to make all these, this big money.
TechMetric is the all-in-one software solution for auto shops. It can do just about anything.
How can I build trust with customers?
How much? TechMetric can do that. How can I do an inspection faster? TechMetric can do that.
How can I make this as painless as possible?
TechMetric can do that.
How can I run my shop from anywhere?
TechMetric can do that.
Can I just pay for my repair from my phone?
TechMetric can do that.
How can I be a better man?
You could try putting your crap away, Dennis.
Sometimes you just need to put your crap away. But for shop productivity, increased revenue, and a better customer experience, TechMetric can do that.
Like I went to Sir Sanford Fleming in Lindsay I was going to be a heavy equipment technician. I was going to go work in a logging camp and make like $100,000 in 2001 working on logging equipment and dodge bears and all this kind of. Life is funny that way. But so when you came out of college, was there lots of opportunity right away to start in the trade, or how did that go for you?
Everybody wanted somebody with experience. So it was still like pretty difficult to kind of get your foot in the door. That first job, I've always even told other ones coming out of the school, that first job is always the hardest one to get because you have no experience. And everyone's like, oh, we want 30-year apprentice or, someone who's been working in the trade for 5 years. Like, well, we can't get there without starting here. So it's always that struggle of finding the right place that's going to bring you along.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there was a lot of opportunities. It's just not for people coming out of school.
So what year was this, Liz, approximately?
Oh,
I'm not trying to date you, just your age you out, but
yeah, I think it was about 14 years ago.
Okay.
Or is it 15? I don't know. I've lost track.
Yeah. So we could say, 2010. We're talking thereabouts, 2009, 2010. Because I can remember, I was the, kind of around the millennial when it changed. When I started, and they were dying for people. Like, there was a shortage then, you know what I mean, of people. And then I think I could agree around 2010, I was in a dealer. I can remember it kind of tapering off, and it was like we didn't have to run an ad. We always had a full shop. Like, it wasn't like we're always looking for techs. If somebody dropped a resume off, it actually got really looked at, because like we don't just need a person. We want, we need an asset to the team, not just a body.
Yeah.
So what did you do when it was like, how did that feel when, you're kind of knocking on doors and people are going, oh, you need more experience, but you don't have any experience. How do you get the experience if you can't, nobody will give you experience?
Yeah. I think that's really where kind of networking came into play.
Okay.
Just like from the people that I've talked to in the past, or like, so even some of the professors kind of went out on the limb. It's like, hey, she's great. She graduated top of her class. She's worth taking a chance on because she wants to do this. And the first shop I worked at was actually a GM dealer. And that was a really interesting experience. I learned a lot. Partially, like, the one thing I even bark at everybody about, it's like, never, ever, ever leave a job in the middle of doing something important. If you're doing oil change and you've dropped that car down, put the oil in it. Do not walk away.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if like your like full on service managers come down, just tell them, nicely, just give me 1 second to put the oil in the car before we walk away. Or if you're torquing tires, just 1 second, let me finish torquing the tires. Because, it wasn't all my mistakes, but I've seen other people's mistakes too. Just what can happen when a place that's poorly managed and that manager's always in your face and pulling you off to go tell you about other things that are completely irrelevant at the time. But being experienced, I didn't know. And also they'd gone from 1 apprentice to 6 all within a couple of weeks. So that was interesting. But having the engine mechanic there really wanted to train me as a next engine mechanic.
Right.
But then things didn't work out because I was not efficient enough for the manager. As having never worked in a shop before, it's kind of stands that I'm not going to be. So he was really upset when I was fired. And then the fact he kept, he's like, hey, I'm trying to get the new manager to hire you back. So it was kind of nice in that regard and gave me the extra ability to keep going, that, I'm not a complete failure. Like, there's more to it than just being efficient.
Yeah.
So
somebody sees potential in you. It feels good. Isn't that messed up though, Liz, how you have somebody that's agreed to take on a mentorship role, in the sense that like your senior technician sees value in you, sees potential, wants to, bring you up, groom you along, show you the tricks and the methods and all that kind of stuff. And the management says you're not efficient enough. Yeah. Or I use the two terms interchangeably, but they're really very different terms. Or you didn't produce enough for them to be happy, right? And that drives me up the wall, because it's like for them, it's so simple. It's like my young apprentices have to produce X amount of hours a week to justify me keeping them there. Otherwise, I'm going to get rid of them and they're going to be something else, or I'll get someone else. Yeah. That is so not an accurate earmarker of what your abilities probably were. Because I sense that you kind of had the right attitude in the right way, which is like, my stuff is going to be perfect. My stuff is going to be well done, torqued, cleaned, put away, organized, done properly. Am I wrong to probably assume that that's, No,
that's right. And I hated having comebacks. And also when I was given the technicians comeback, because they're a flat rate, so they didn't want to do their own comebacks. So I was like, here, give it to one of the apprentice and they can fix why my brakes are squeaking. So I got really good at diagnosing brake squeaks.
You and I had a similar path, because I was a straight time apprentice in a dealer for a long time. Even after, like, I was getting pretty proficient at a lot of the more advanced stuff in the shop of programming and diag and stuff like that, but I was still hourly. So I got everybody's comeback. So it kind of messed with my head and messed with my ego, because I'd look over there at them and people still hear me. This guy's been here 10 years and like he makes mistakes like that, or that's the kind of work that he turned out. So it had a very early on, it had a very weird effect on my psyche, in the sense that like your time in didn't mean shit to me, right? Your credentials didn't mean shit to me. Your work that you put out spoke of what you were, what you felt, how you felt about what you were doing. And I believe that like you don't have to work somewhere for 10 years to make that decision that you're going to turn out quality, right? It's either in you or it's not. Yeah. So good on you for, being that type of technician that had to go behind others. I had a lot of days where I wanted to quit because I got tired of, like, you see them making more money than you and you see them being the manager's, pet. And yet you're going behind them and fixing one or two of their cars a week for them,
Yeah.
So what did you think of the brand, at least? Because obviously probably that workplace you didn't love.
The brand was okay. I actually, down the road, I went to Honda dealership, which I love Hondas. Hondas are like, I love working on Hondas. Even now, it's like when Honda comes in, like, fantastic. They're easy to work on. I know what I'm doing. And to get something like a BMW, it's like, I don't want it. Or Volkswagen, it's like, oh, look, we have all these codes and we can't even look it up. Thanks, Volkswagen. Like, fantastic.
Yeah. So that's so you left the Chevrolet dealer. They fired you, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. How did that feel? It was
very short-lived. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Because I knew going into it that I even told him, like, flat out, I have never worked in a shop before. Ever. So, and then some of the things I was doing, like, because nobody else in the shop would do it. I think the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, that for their efficiency numbers was a little coal bolts that needed the catalytic converter replaced in a warranty. The card sat in the parking lot, I found out, all week. And now it was Thursday afternoon. They're like, oh, this car has to go tomorrow. Who's going to do it? And all the techs were like, no, not me. Like, she's like, Liz, can you do this? I'm like, sure. Like, I've got service information. I'll give it a try. They're like, yeah, you've got, ask, the manager if you need any help. I'm like, cool. So I started doing it, and then 5 o'clock came around. I'm like, all right. So I punched out and I started on it the next morning, as we do. Like, the car's in your hoist, you finish it the next morning. And they had this efficiency manager come around. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, car I was working on last night. He's like, why? I'm like, because it's in my pay. This is what I was told I was supposed to do. He goes, oh, and he storms off and it's like, oh, there's oil changes out there for waiters. Can you do one of them? I'm like, in what bay? Yeah. And then at the end of the day, like, oh, can you come to the office? Like, oh, you're just not efficient enough. We have to let you go. I'm like, okay. So it's just kind of like, wasn't a whole lot of guidance. So it's like, it was really difficult to figure out, what am I supposed to do? Because even when I started there, it's like, okay, bring the car in. All right, which car?
Yeah.
Well, you have to go to the tower. Where's the tower? And like, I don't even know where this stuff is. I'm like, you have to find keys. Where do I find the keys? Yeah. And like, it was a good learning experience. It was actually one of those productive learning experiences, as opposed to something I've learned I'm never going to do it again. So that was interesting. But I learned quite a bit, and it did help me throughout the rest of the career, even it was a short-lived one. And then I did go to Honda a couple jobs down the road. Yeah. Left Honda, but I also realized I hate dealership life. There's so much politics involved with it. I'm like, I don't like it. It is not for me.
No. It sounds like your Chevrolet dealer was so typical of so many dealers I've seen, where it's like the left hand isn't talking to the right hand, communication breakdown, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, it's just piss poor management. It's just terrible. Like, because obviously somebody thought you should have had an empty bay at 8 o'clock in the morning to be doing all the waiter oil changes that are booked in, right? Thank God most of the dealers around here now have finally gone to a quick lube or a fast lane, as I should say.
Yes.
So if it's a customer only wants a bloody oil change, it don't go to the back of the shop, and it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, if you're not coming in to do a warranty complaint and an oil change and maybe a scheduled service for that interval, it doesn't need to go see a tech. It can see a quick lane, technician out front. They can dump the oil, and ship the customer on the way. They got 15 minutes. They want to be out of here, whatever, protect their warranty, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, especially when it's their first oil change.
Yeah.
It's literally going to, be like join the oil, make sure that, yes, everything's still good, like a quick check on everything.
Yeah.
If it was PDI'd properly, you're not going to find anything on that first oil change. So.
Yeah. And you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And you really shouldn't have the customer coming in and complaining with a first oil change with a crap list of stuff to complain about. That has to be dispatched to the shop. Like, that's kind of where it's like, get the oil change done, and the service writer can say to the customer, okay, so you got a squeak and you got a wind noise or whatever, that nonsense. When can I book you back in to have that, handled? And we'll have a loaner car ready for you, have it in the shuttle van, and we'll get you out of here, and we'll take care of that. I saw so many times it was like they would do the oil change in the quick lube, and then the customer would say, oh, by the way, and then it's like, okay, now we've gotten the, customer, we've got the oil change done out front, which I, in the back, if I'm looking at the car for something else, I'm glad to do an oil change. Don't give me an oil change only and bring it in the back, because you don't want to pay enough time for me to look the car over, do the eval, do the oil change, and put it back out. But if I'm there fixing something else that they're complaining about under warranty, sure, I'll do the oil change. It's on the hoist. Why the hell not? So we would see that and then be like, can you look at these other three things, and the oil change is already done? That drove me nuts. And CSI sucks because... right? We didn't look at it because you didn't even know necessarily if you're going to get paid, because those three things as flat rate, now not straight time. Straight time, I didn't care. Fuck, tear the car apart. Doesn't matter to me. I get paid. But when I was flat rate, no, I'm not tearing the car apart for something that is, every Cobalt that I've listened to this week has all made that same noise. There is no fix for it. It's a Cobalt. Congratulations. You bought a Cavalier. It's an introductory level car.
Yeah.
They're going to be less than stellar like a Caddy. So you go on, you try your kick at Honda for the dealership thing, and you find that the politics were they similar, Liz, or were they better? Like, you like that brand, but...
The politics were actually worse.
Wow.
Because they actually pitted the different departments against each other. It's like, oh, well, parts made more money, or sales made, or sales has to make more money on this car on the used car side, so you need to take a pay cut. I'm like, no, I don't. Or just so much ridiculousness like that. It's just like, oh,
yeah. Well,
like the one was a car that I looked at. I'm like, no, they bought from auction. I looked at the car. I'm like, no, it's a trade-in. Sorry. And the sales guy didn't really look the car over, so they sent it to the back. I look it over. I'm like, no, this car is not worth the amount of work it's going to need to do like a Honda, the Honda certified for a used car. Yeah, the certified pre-owned. I'm like, you know what, you're better off just, put it in the wholesale line, the amount of work that it needs, because it was due for like the timing belts and a bunch of other stuff. So I said, okay. They put it in they put it in their as-is line, and then a different sales manager, for some reason they had two, decided he put a sticker number on it and then sold it for the less than the sticker price, and then they sent it back to me. Oh, you looked at the car. Can you do the safety? I'm like, no. Why am I doing the safety? It's like, oh, because we sold it. I'm like, did you not look at the file? Well, no. I'm like, because you needed tires, you were due for a timing belt, and like all this other stuff. They're like, oh, well, you're going to have to do this. Like, we're not, like, I'm not going to make any money on this car, so you got to do it for less than what. I'm like, no, I don't.
Sucks to be you.
It's like, well, parts has to take a pay loss too. They're going to have to sell us the parts that cost. I'm like, really? And just a whole bunch of like little things like that. It's like, well, our department isn't going to make any money on this, so you guys have to take a loss. I'm like, not my fault. I did my job. You didn't do yours. And just
Liz,
all the little internal bickering.
I could hug you right now because I have been through that, and it is like it is. But you know what I mean? Because it's like, I'm going to say it. I'm going to offend some people. I'm perfectly okay with that. Salespeople are some of the lowest IQ'd people that walk into the dealership every day. In terms of being able to, like, because they don't read for crap, right? They don't listen for shit, and then it's like, and then they go, oh well, I've already made the deal. I already have to do this. Like, I'm not going to lose money on it. Yes, you certainly are. You and your department are certainly gonna, because you effed up. Right? You made the mistake. It goes back to leadership. If you've got a service or salesman running around like that, a salesperson, running around like that, doing things, not paying attention, that's on you. You lead them as your manager or sales manager. 2 sales managers in this dealer, they're so good. And they screw up, that's on them. That's like, so guess what? You gave that car away at a loss. Too friggin' bad. It's the way
Yeah.
it works. We're all told as technicians, you're going to take a loss every day. You're going to lose time on this job. You're going to lose time on that job. Why does it not work for the other departments? Thank God parts is starting to finally stand up and say, no, I'm not giving you the parts at cost. Because I'm bonused on now, what do the parts really actually cost? We never really know, because when you start to, like, you've seen it, what they actually sell for list is not even really list, and what they sell for trade is not really trade, and what they show as cost is not really cost. It's all imaginary numbers. I hated that nonsense. I hated, a lot of my tenure at the dealer, they always seem to appoint one technician to do all the used cars safeties. Because I think they found, they seen him work out some kind of deal where it's like, he's not going to go too hard on us. And that way, if I have to screw him on a job, I'll tell him he'll make it up on the next one, right, Liz? And it's just they don't. But then he's not looking at the wind noise and the water leaks on a brand new car, right? If he's busy enough all day, or she's busy enough all day reconditioning used cars, they just kind of I worked right next to him. And senior mechanic at a Chrysler dealer way back when, he never touched. I worked there with him for 3 years. He never touched a customer car. We had enough used cars going through that he could just recondition. So he'd do 2 sets of tires and 2 4-axle brake jobs a day. He was happy. He's good.
Yeah,
that was all. An oil change on every car, like a battery, and occasionally one. He was good. He didn't mind. He was like, I'm hitting my 50. Like, what do I care? And we're all like, what are you doing? Sure, you can, you'll do the timing belt on the car when it's 4 years old, but don't give it to them when it's got an engine complaint, when it's under warranty, even though we just sold it last week and now it's back. That was the part that pissed me off too, is because sales would sell it, would come back. It didn't even go to that tech, right? And then everybody in the dealership's going so you got your one chosen guy that reconditions the used cars, but then when it returns to the dealership, it's just another ticket, and everybody's no. And I understand what they're trying to do here. We're trying to build a relationship with the customer, but you're screwing everybody in the back when you do that, right? Yeah. He, of all people, or she that's doing the recondition, should know whether that car is, when it's leaving, whether it's going to leave right or not, or probably going to come back, and what it is. Sales probably already knew there was an issue with that car, probably already told you about it. You thought, and it left, and here it is now, a week back, and now they're on a survey and the whole thing. I'm right there with you. I hate the dealership. Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of goes back to even the issue we have now. It's just oh, well, if the customer's not going to, it's not that big of a deal. We'll address it if the customer complains. I'm like, can't we just fix the car right?
Yeah.
That's because so many times I've seen that. It's that's okay. If the customer complains about it, we'll deal with it then. It's no, just do your job right the first time.
Yeah. And then sales has the most convenient memory of not documenting that and not remembering.
Oh, yes.
So it left without air conditioning working, and then they came back and complained about it, and sales is like, what do you mean the air conditioning doesn't work? Well, service is going to have to give them an estimate figure. I'm not paying for that. Meanwhile, it was written up as, hey, this doesn't work well. Oh, well, we'll see what happens when it comes back. Salesmen are scum. I hate them.
Yeah.
Anyway.
My favorite was always, hey, Mrs. So-and-so is having problems with her radio. Can you go out and take a look at it? It's oh, she just doesn't know how to work it because you didn't do your job as a salesman to go out there and just kind of walk this 90-year-old woman who just bought this brand new Honda with all this navigation and everything else. And she has no idea how to even turn the systems on.
She's trying to pair a flip phone to her. Yeah. Been there. Yeah. The customer looks at you crazy.
Yeah.
What do you mean I can't pair this phone?
Yeah. It's oh, my son just did it with his. I'm it's not going to work with yours. Sorry. Yeah. So
what?
Yeah.
What did you take away from Honda other than the love of the product?
Probably just I hate dealerships. Just the political nature of it. And just, we were at the time, we were still doing the emissions testing because it was still a thing here in Ontario. I think part of that, what I learned is kind of just how to take care of your technicians. Because I was the only emission inspector in the shop, so I could actually do all the testing and repairs to it. And it was a daily fight because half our scan tool, like we had one aftermarket scan tool which didn't work. I spent all day on the phone, like, oh, can you just like try to fix it? I'm like, so I spent like all day fighting with the scan tool and the tech support hotline, all to come down to like the scan tool is internally toast. It needs to be replaced. Like, oh, well, maybe it just needs an update. I'm like, no, we need to replace it. So then they had the parts department send it out for $700 to do an update, and it still didn't work. I'm like, well, I told you it didn't work. But at the time, they had a discount through their parts department because they had a CarQuest attached to it. They could have got a brand new scan tool. It was Nautel, but it was because it was a brand new line. It was on sale through CarQuest. They could have got it for like a couple $100 more than what we paid for the update. But now they've spent the money on the update. Oh, we can't afford a new scan tool. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And just things like that. And then when I left, it's brought to me because they just had a brand new service manager start like 2 days, and I quit. The other tech quit. So they brought me to the office. Why are you leaving? I'm like, well, I can't do my job. And like, there's certain things like I need, like, if we're an emissions repair facility, we need to be able to communicate with all of the cars. Like there's certain things like, I'm happy to buy, but at the same time, like, some things aren't in my budget personally because I was a single mom. So I'm like, I can't just go and drop like $3,000 or whatever on a scan tool. They're like, oh, well, we bought a new alignment rack, so you should be able to do your job. I'm like, alignment racks don't do emission testing. Like, I can't, that's two completely different systems. Like, the owner was like, but it's new and it's all shiny. I'm like, no.
Let's take a fish and throw it in the air and see how it flies, and then complain when it can't fly for shit. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like,
I love that thinking. I love that thinking. It's just great. Yeah. It's just like, because I can remember Nissan dealer I was at got bought out by a new owner, and they bring in, and they, there was the old alignment machine worked great. Of course, they get a new one. Cool. Great. The newest Hunter, and I love Hunter. Great machines.
Yes.
Well, and they're like, this is a $50,000 machine. Great setup, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, it's sweet. Like, it's cool. And they cut the labor time on the alignments because they're like, you should be able to do it faster. Oh. No, actually, the cars are more advanced now. There's like an ADAS thing and zeroing steering angle and all that stuff. Like, it actually takes a little bit more now. Well, that doesn't matter. We're you used to get an hour and a half for an alignment. Now you get one. Okay, that's how they paid for the machine. Thank you very much. The price didn't go down to the customer. That was the thing that we weren't stupid about, right? Like if you go and take a menu priced item and you go to the technicians and go, hey, this is faster. We can do more. Cool. Bring the price down for the customer. Let's sell more of them. You leave the price at the same and you take the labor off. We're not stupid. We know where that money's going. It's going to pay for the equipment. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be buying equipment. And that's why we do it. That's why we sell it. That's how it's priced. But like, do you think I have all kinds of love now for doing alignment the most perfect way? If I used to get 1.5 and that was a good, reasonable time to do a 4-wheel alignment on something 2-3 years old, so all of a sudden I'm doing an hour. I'm not invested with you that way now anymore, right? Like you're going to get an hour, and that's just
especially
the way it was.
When we have all the salt and snow. So even if I had 2-3-year-old cars where we're still busting out the torches to heat up those tie rods, we can break them loose. Like, Canada's awesome.
So you have, so the alignment machine was supposed to fix your emission testing problems.
Yes.
I can remember all that emissions testing when we came through too. And for people that aren't familiar, that's a pretty hard test to pass, to do the repair side of it. Like just about, a lot of people got certified to do the testing, but what Liz is saying is she did testing and repair. So if it failed, Liz kind of had a pretty good understanding of what it failed on based on we put them on a dyno and loaded and looked at the gas and all that kind of stuff, and then went in and fixed them. So good on you, Liz. Good on you. Because I've known lots of technicians that failed that test. Well done.
In the defense of those techs, some of the questions were terrible. So at the end of the test, like, oh, do you have any comments? I'm like, yes, I do have some comments. Yeah, because I remember the worst was I got the one wrong. It's just because it was poorly worded and the question didn't give you enough information to answer it correctly. So I'm like, you're getting you're getting earful about this because like this is not okay. You can't test people and then and expect them to guess. Like we're not mind readers, we're technicians. Like I can't magically figure out what you're trying to say when the information's not there. So it's like, oh, this car is this old. What does it need? I'm like, what's the repair for it? I'm like, I don't know. There's no information. So,
yeah,
but
it's tough, eh? It really is.
yes.
And that's the thing. Like, I can't, when I was at the dealer flat rate, if you'd have asked me to start looking at a bunch of different brands for failed diagnostic or for failed emissions testing diagnostic wise, and you wanted to flat rate me on it, I told you to go eat your hat because it wasn't happening, right? Like, I would have told you to sublet everything down to the dealer. The dealer guy probably already knows when you make the phone call what it needs for this code or this fail or whatever, blah, 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 right? What we saw happen in Canada, you probably saw it too, Liz. I'm saying in Canada, where both of us are in Canada, but for the people that are listening, the sticker fix for a lot of it became people up here was we slapped new catalytic converters on a lot of stuff. Or what you did was you got it, so you priced the catalytic converter, which was over what we had was called a conditional pass, which meant then if the customer's car was going to exceed a certain amount for repair, they paid that amount and got maybe a tune-up, or maybe got, like and then they a catalytic converter, and then that passed them. They didn't necessarily have to go through and re-dyno and pass on the dyno. They just had to pay some money. It was a money grab. And then that car meant that the next time, if in 2 more years, when it came up for certification, they couldn't get a conditional. It had to be fixed properly at that point. Yeah. I'm not sure, Liz, when you were selling them like that, were they weren't allowed conditionals, or were they?
When they're being sold, no, they had to pass to be sold.
Had to pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she couldn't just slap a cat on it to get the gases to clean up, guys. Like, it had to be, it actually had to pass. And then when they went to the OBD2 status setup, it didn't matter what was coming out of the car. We didn't test that way anymore. We just scanned it, and if it had a code in it, it didn't pass. Were you still doing them, Liz, when that was coming up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. A different shop, but yeah.
Yeah, and the European cars wouldn't communicate, and then that's the main thing as to why they scrapped the program, is because a bunch of people in Ontario with really expensive, really brand new cars, Europeans, every time they went for a testing, it said no communication, can't get a valid status, and that's why they got really upset, because they had brand new cars under warranty that weren't being able to pass on the government's essentially scan machine, and they weren't being allowed to drive the car.
Yeah.
So you got $100,000 Benz that has no check engine light on, no drivability problem, still under warranty, and you're not allowed to drive it because the government's CAN tool says that it can't communicate and there's something wrong there. Yeah, they scrapped that program pretty fast.
Yeah. I think too, with coming out of all the gateways too, it's like, man, I couldn't imagine having to do that now. I was like, man, what a nightmare that would be.
Yeah.
So
you left that dealer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what happened?
I went back to the aftermarket because I did the bulk of my apprenticeship training in the aftermarket, because it was a very short-lived tenure at Chevy, at the GM dealer. So with the aftermarket, I learned a lot from those techs, and also, again, apprentices are cheap labor. Mm-hmm. I had to do a lot of my training on my time. I had a good friend of mine. Actually, his boss liked me, but he was they were over like an hour and a half away. But on my days off, I drive up there, go to their shop, learn with a friend of mine, and so that's how I got a lot of my experience to actually get to where I was, or where I wanted to be. Because I'm like, I need my license, and I'm not going to learn what I need to doing tires and oil changes. So that was like, I even tell I'm currently in the industry, you shouldn't have to do that. It's what I did, but you shouldn't have to. So I don't know if this speaks to the nature of the industry. Hopefully things start changing.
I think it 100% speaks for the nature of our industry. And, I've kind of always taken it back to, we need to get back to the traditional, almost the European way of the way they do skilled trades, which is like, it's very traditional master and a mentor, whether it's a cabinetry or something like that, where you literally are at their elbow using their tools, watching how the craftsmen create something, a repair, a new ship, whatever. Up here where we commercialize everything, it's like, okay, I want to sell tires at 0.8. I want a 0.8 hour labor for 4 tires. My flat rate technicians have all told me to go F myself because they can't do it for 0.8. So I need a whole bunch of lower skilled, cheaper rate people to come in and do my tires for me. Like, and I'm sure, Liz, you've seen it. Up here, it's the running joke. Every October, there's an ad for a technician.
Yep.
For because the tire season happens. Yep. And then every April, there's an ad for a technician. Because by January, when we've done all the tires in the local area, we fire that technician. And then we go hire one back in April to get the next 2 months of snow rush done. And we fire that technician too. Because we don't have the rest of the work the rest of the time to sustain that. Yeah. So you get, I wish we could, as a business, we could stop having to rely on that and be able to say, Liz wants to go learn how to be the next engine person at this dealership, and she's being mentored by this person. And then we have the next front end technician who is, you're going to mentor that person and watch how they do an alignment in 1 hour and it's perfect and all that kind of stuff. And that guy over there that's doing, or a girl that's like wicked at air conditioning, somebody's going to mentor them. And we'll see the progression in the shop and the succession. Because in an independent aftermarket, we just do that very naturally. Yeah. But in the dealership world, we suck at it. Terrible at it. Because it's like we hold everything so close to what I learned how to do in a very efficient manner. I don't want to necessarily show everyone else how to do it. Because the very next week, what your same dealer service manager will look at you and it's like you could teach, your guy could have taught you how to do all that engine work like that. And then the next month, if you're up there to his speed or her speed, and you're just knocking it out, and your guy has a slip, your service manager will say to him, what's going on? Like, this person's now outproducing you. I became that technician at a dealer I worked at real quick, where all of a sudden everybody's like, man, there must be something wrong with you. Compton's over there. He was number 1 3 weeks in a row. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, he's new to the product. Why were you guys killing it? Like, that's the way we treat our people in this industry, unfortunately, and it sucks. It really does. Yeah.
Well, but it also kind of goes back to why so many technicians don't want to share their knowledge. They don't want to really mentor along apprentices, be either a dealership or aftermarket side, because they're afraid, rightfully so, that apprentice will come in, learn what they're doing. They show them all the tricks they took 20 years to learn. Now this person's learned them in a year. Now they're outperforming them, and now they're out of a job because of that. Like, it shouldn't be like that, but because at the same time, that younger person still doesn't know everything, but it's also impossible to know everything. But it's hard, like, for anyone coming in to even get that knowledge. And for those who, I get the fear of why they don't want to share it, but at the same time, with so much changing in the industry, we have to network. We got to share, like, with our, I hate the idea of competition too, because most of the time, they're not our competitions. Like, they should be like our brothers and sisters in the industry, because it's impossible for us to service every single car in the area. Mind you, there's also shops I wouldn't trust. Other shops I would. Like, there's definitely some places like, okay, I'm going to take my car here. I'm like, don't. Like, others, but it's like, oh, I need this done. I'm like, okay, go to this shop because, they do great work, Now,
let me ask you a question, because it's kind of something I think about too. When you say that, don't take it to this shop, do you base it on, because you've actually, like, do you base it just on the gossip mill? Or do you base it on the fact of, like, you've actually seen cars that have been at that shop and they've now wound up in your bay?
In the past, a lot of it is mostly like they've been to that shop and they've kind of like, oh, I've had it at this shop 3 times. I've spent this much money. Still have the problem. It's like, oh, okay. And when it's like several times over, especially when you're, some of the small towns I've worked in, so, okay, when we routinely get this happening from certain shops, like, all right, just, avoid them. So, yeah. Or even cars I've seen come from used dealerships. Like, oh, I just bought this car. I need the first oil change. Like, and I look at the car. I'm like, oh, where did you buy this? Because you need this, 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 and this, and this. Like, so, or even my own personal experience. When I was an apprentice, I bought a little Cavalier because my old truck was just too much in gas. I'm like, I can't afford this. The car was safetied, and I'm like, okay, so I'm driving the car. I'm like, the brake pedal feels a little weird. So I'm like, okay, what's going on? So put it up in the air, pull the tires off, and the e-brake on one side wasn't attached. It was totally seized on the other. Lower control and bushings were falling out of the car, and the brake line and the gas line was starting to seep. I'm like, So, a technician walked by and said, yeah, that car should have never passed the safety. So I went back to the shop who did the safety. They somehow found out I was an apprentice. And they're like, well, you're an apprentice. You're going to make mistakes in your career. I'm like, and? Like, this is not my fault. Like, they put all the blame on me. I'm like, this isn't they flat out said this is not our fault. I'm like, but your name's on the safety. You checked it over. Well, when it comes to e-brakes, they're usually C. So we just gently tug on it so we don't actually cause any issues with them. Like, but that's not safe. Like, if it's C's, you should fit. It needs to be replaced. Exactly. It's like, oh, so things like that, like my own personal time, like this is, we should not be blaming the customer because we didn't do our job right. So just all those little things, at least I've learned from, like, to remember not to do as a technician. Like, don't blame the customer if we've messed up. It's, you apologize. I'm sorry, sir, ma'am. Let's make this right for you. How can we make this right for you? As opposed to, well, like.
But see, Lucas and I had just a great conversation. We get talking about how there's so many shops that are, the margin is so low, they're not making enough money that they can't either make it right, or a lot of them, here's even the real reality, they can't even do it right because there's no money left. And we always make excuses for when it's a used car because they say, well, they paid too much for it. And if it actually was evaluated properly and repaired properly, they'd lose money. I never gave two craps if they lost money. I always said, teach your people to evaluate better or just bid lower. If you bid lower and you don't get it, oh well. If your sales manager says, listen, we need to move more units, bring more cars back home from the auction, and all of them are crap and you're putting an engine and a tranny in every one of them, I don't care. I don't care, right? Because as soon as you sell that used car for now my new car dealer, you go around and start telling everybody that new car dealer sold me a piece of crap car. The real story is they sold you an off-brand that they picked up at the auction that they knew nothing about, that they just skimped out on to sell it to you, right? They sold you a Euro whatever that burns oil, or, they sold you a Volkswagen TDI that was supposed to have a timing belt done and it didn't. And, it went over 100,000 kilometers and the belt broke and the engine's cooked. Like, they do all that. Yeah. I didn't care if that department paid too much for it or didn't put enough into it when they sold it, because they're now hurting my brand, my dealer's reputation by how they conducted themselves. That's what I hated. When the shops out there, though, that are safetying these used cars for these car lots, that was a big thing for me in a long time in this industry. I couldn't stand is it's like, and I would tell people all the time, it's like, well, I'm buying at this used car lot or that used car lot. And I'd be like, they don't even have mechanics that work there, eh? They'd be like, what do you mean they don't have mechanics that work there? I'm like, no, they don't have mechanics that work there. Well, then who's fixing the cars? That's what you want to know, is who's fixing the cars. Because that's really, like, you want to talk to those people. You don't want to talk to the salesman. You want to look at that reputation. Because if they don't have a licensed technician on staff or somebody that can fix the car up, they're probably selling some pretty sketchy stuff because they've made an arrangement with a local shop that says, hey, I'm going to bring you 20 cars a month to safety. And that guy, all he's thinking is 20 more hours labor that I do on safety inspections, or maybe 40 if I charge him an hour to inspect it and an hour to re-inspect it after his non-licensed guy does the inspection. See, years ago I worked at a shop, Liz, and maybe you can tell me if you've been to something different, where down the street was a used car lot, and they had 4 technicians on staff. Not one of them had a license. So all day long, they would bring a used car up that they bought at the auction. We would inspect the car. It would go back down and they would bolt all the cheapest parts on they could find. And it would come back up and we would re-inspect it again. I don't know the exact numbers of what he was charging, but I know that he wasn't charging to do the re-inspection. He just got paid to do the inspection. So we would go down and say, like, I can remember when we had a Durango, a 2-wheel drive Durango, which was rare. And it had a loose wheel bearing on the front. Now, that wheel bearing is like, has a little stub on the end of the spindles, just looks like the 4-wheel drive one. It was a $80 bearing back then. And it was loose. And it was already torqued up, the nut up to spec, so it wasn't going to get any tighter. And I remember looking at that car 3 times, and when he brought it back down and I would do the inspection again and say, wheel bearing's still loose, wheel bearing's still loose. He was never replacing the wheel bearing. He was just tightening the nut more and more. Ugh. The technician, because somebody told him, we're not putting a bearing on that car.
Yep.
Like, that kind of stuff, You've probably seen that too. So when people like make this idea that I'm buying this used car, like I hate safeties. I hate doing safeties at work. I hate the whole used car market. It just pisses me right off because we as technicians up here in Canada, you know this, you're putting your license on the line when you sign the safety slip saying the car is safe. Because if something happens and they find out that you were liable and you failed to do it, like didn't hook up the parking brake, they'll take your license away. That's the reality of it. It isn't like you don't lose your ASE certs. Everybody goes, oh, in the States, ASEs, they won't take them away from you if you have something like that happen. But up here, we're unemployable if something like that happens. Nobody will touch you with a 10-foot pole. You will lose your trade license. You lose your CFQ. You'll never get it back.
Yeah, so. That's what happened to. I think there's a gentleman in Collingwood that he happened to. He didn't. He was charged for doing the fake safety, and the truck the brake lanes blew like right afterwards. So
that's a huge. There's Liz. You might know of the other case that happened. It was a Dodge Ram with a steering box, and the box was found to be. It had death wobble, okay, like all the solid axle, Ram 2500s have.
Yeah.
And it was found after it was sold from this little rinky-dink car lot that it was set up with death wobble. And they went back to it and they figured out steering box is bad. It's past 30 days, 30-day safety. Hey, we don't do anything.
Yep.
Customer takes the truck back and goes, it's doing this. The used car lot says, okay, you need a steering box because that's what they found out from their mechanic that checked it out. Again, another used car lot that didn't have a licensed mechanic on staff. They decide to make it right for the customer. We'll buy a steering box, but you're going to be on the hook for putting it in because my guy won't put it in for free, and I'm not paying him anymore. I've already lost my ass on this truck. That truck got into one of those death wobble situations, and it crossed lanes of traffic, and it killed somebody in a Honda Civic. Do you know where the steering box was, Liz?
In the passenger
seat. It was in the back of the truck. Back of the truck. That guy that ran the shop, I can't remember all those incidents, names, and so on and so forth, but I remember reading about this like over 10 years ago. They never did find the legit work order for that truck at his place of business where he kept all his licenses or his safeties and whatnot. He obviously burnt it or destroyed it or whatever. But they went through every safety he had done in like the last 10 years and hit him with so many fines for inconsistencies with how the paperwork was done and everything else. Lost his license, lost his business.
Yeah. And the scary thing, the one shop I worked at, we did safeties for a couple little used car lots that were down the street. And the one day, a customer brings their car in. They just bought it from that thing. We didn't realize it was that vehicle. Because part of the shop, put it there, did the oil change. Like, oh, you need tires. And the customer's like, what do you mean? I just bought this vehicle. We're like, wait a second. Yeah. We've seen this car before. I pulled up the original work order. He had different tires. They changed the tires on the vehicle. Because when I do safeties, I always write down, right? They always write down the branded tire. And that's why I did that. Like I always write down the branded tire and the tread depth because at least we're covered. And it's a good thing we did because these tires were not the tires that were on the car when we did the safety inspection.
That's right. They went on another Cavalier.
Which is scary.
Yeah.
Like that is so scary. It's like, man, what is the nature of our industry that we're doing so shady things to people who don't know? And yet we're being the professionals. Like they're relying on us to know what we're doing. And,
have you seen the new procedures, Liz?
Ruining it.
Have you seen the new procedures now that have to be done for the safeties in Ontario?
I know I haven't. I've heard about them. I've talked to some buddies who are still doing the safeties, but now that I'm off doing all the ADOS stuff, we don't do safeties now, but like I've heard it's just like all the cameras, which is good because it helps. There's still ways around it because it always will be, but it help the people like all these are stupid. I'm like, no, it's to help prevent some of the stuff and all these these shady safety checks to help make sure the vehicles going down the road are actually legitimately safe. Like the emission systems came in.
Yes. Isn't it sad that the government had to get that involved for us to be able to police ourselves properly?
Yeah. But then again, there are governing bodies of like the trades, like it used to be skilled, whatever it was, that was College of Trades. And we have Skilled Trades Ontario. How little they're actually doing to police, to actually help. There's been complaints. I know personally of shops who don't have anybody licensed working there. They've come in and they're like, oh, well, hurry up and get somebody licensed. They don't stop them from working. They just say, hurry up and find somebody licensed to work here. I'm like,
they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to. Do you ever meet one? Do you ever meet an inspector from Ontario College of Trades?
I think once they came in, it's like, oh, we need a license for somebody here. It's like, yeah, and that was literally the end of it. It's like, all right. So
I met one time. I was working at a truck shop where I had been hired as a 310S to work on their ambulance fleet. And of course, that day we didn't have ambulances in. So we didn't have any light duty. So what am I told to do? Go put a leaf spring in that dump truck over there. Which I'll tell you flat out, I'd done hundreds of them, lots of them. Yeah. I knew how to do leaf springs, right? I worked back and forth. At that shop, we all flip-flopped from 310S to 310T. We did whatever the boss told us because you weren't going to argue with them. And you'd say, like, this isn't right. I'm not to be working on this. Yeah. You go, do you want to work or not? Yeah, I need to work. Let's go and do the axle. So she, very nice young lady, comes walking in, and she says, she has to see my license and show it to her. 310S. Yeah. She opens the door of the truck and she goes, well, this is way above your weight rating. I'm like, yep. And she goes, did you know that you're supposed to be not working on this? Yep. Why are you working on it? Because I said, my boss told me to. But I said, if you have any more questions, go in and talk to them. I said, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this. So, of course, then they go in the office and they shut the door and they have a little conversation. She comes back out and she says, well, thank you for being very honest with me. She said, as long as they overlook it when you're done. And I'm like, isn't this stupid? We're paying, the government's paying how many millions of dollars to implement this program and it has no teeth. And she, of course, very nice lady. I have her card still somewhere hanging around here. She probably doesn't still work for the Ontario College of Trades. But she kept saying to me, well, I'm a technician too. And I said, I don't doubt that you are. Don't doubt that you are. But I said, I can tell you that, I've been doing this 15 years now at the time. And I said, the things that I have seen in this industry where I am not supposed to be necessarily doing something, but I am forced to do it, I said, would make you sick to your stomach. She goes, I know, it's bad. And here's the reality is there's hardly enough people to enforce what needs to be done. Yeah. It's the same with the MTO officers, right? Liz, yep. There's somebody told me there's less than 100 of them for the whole province of Ontario. And they'll tell you that there's, in your area, there's enough infractions going on every day that they could keep all 100 busy and never even come to Kingston.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. I do remember, as I said, just a friend of mine, her husband, again, somebody else had bought a truck. The brake line's on it, blew on the way back from the used car lot. So they called the used car lot. It's like, hey, it was just safety. The brake line shouldn't have blown. He goes, go ahead and call the MTL. We've been through this before. They're not going to do anything. What? I'm like, that just, and that blew my mind. What do you mean? Clearly he's done this before. He just gets a slap on the wrist for not, don't do it again, do better. And it's like, whatever. They don't
yeah.
So.
So Liz, let's move on to something positive now. So let's kind of, because not listen, and I love talking about this and we can do it, all day.
Oh yeah.
But kind of, and we'll have to come back and discuss this, but how did you get from those kind of situations to, like you said, you kind of touched about on COVID, you were laid off on COVID.
Yeah.
Like I was. That's what makes me as angry. That's kind of, when I was in COVID is when I started this ball rolling, this podcast.
Yes.
If anybody's gone back and listened to the very early ones, Lucas, had me on when I was laid off on COVID, and I was an angry SOB. And I wasn't just angry about COVID. I was angry about the whole damn industry.
Yeah.
I was for you then, that gives me faith because you found this avenue for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's crazy to think that when I started, this industry didn't, this part of the industry, the segment didn't even exist. Right. So who knows what the next 10 to 15 years is even going to bring. But it's just through networking, and just the power of just always looking to what else can we do to help make ourselves better, help improve the industry. And the reason why I went, I partnered with them is because they were legitimately trying to do things correctly. And I had looked into the numbers too. It's before I even talked to them, it's I'm looking at some of the OE procedures. Okay, Hondas, they want 8 meters of space in front of a car before you calibrate that front radar. what shop has 8 meters of open space? And then, you know, kind of a minimum is 2,000 square feet. So I'm like, how many hoists can we shove into 2,000? I think we lost you.
No, you're right back there.
Okay. All right. Because I'm looking at the shop I was working at, like, okay, there's some space, but we don't have 2,000 square feet. So if we took the hoist out, then we'd have it. But then now we're down a bay. So financially, it wouldn't make any sense at all. Plus the cost of the equipment. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, so who's actually doing this? Because as part of a mechanical shop or even a body shop, you can put a lot of cars in that space to do it. And then you'll make a lot more money doing brakes or having cars torn down to do bumpers or whatever than you're going to make doing ADAS. But as a standalone shop, because it's all we do. So, and also when things fail, we know generally what to start doing when it fails. But when we first opened, it took a lot longer to get through it, trying to figure out, okay, so why did this calibration fail? And now we've, you know, having done it for so long, it's like, okay, so we know the basic things to check real quick, to go through and figure, okay, is it an issue with the car? Is it an issue with our lighting? Is there a setup issue? Is it a software issue?
Right.
Like all those things. So.
Do you see some sketchy stuff come in though for calibration after the fact? Like, is that a common thing? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's that make you feel?
Used car lots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sucks, doesn't it?
Like it does. It really, cause like how, it's like we can't calibrate this car and then we have to call the shop. It's like, listen, this is going on. And sometimes they get upset. It's like, well, it was a customer pay. I'm like, but I can't do anything with this car because it wasn't repaired properly.
Yeah.
So it's tough some days. And it's just like,
so it sounds though, probably like your management is pretty understanding that it's not on you. That if you can't get it to calibrate because it wasn't done right, the repair at the body shop, that it's not your fault that it didn't calibrate right. And it doesn't, I have to think that they're not asking you to, hey, lean on the bumper a little bit and pull that radar back into alignment, or, you know.
Which we've seen other, like, we know that happens. Like that. Exactly. Yeah. It's like, oh, when we've gotten cars, like, oh, this one, you know, it was repaired at, you know, such and such dealership, and but this light's come on that dash. Can you take a look at it? And like, well, because the radar is pointing like way out to the left and up. So yeah, it's how they got to calibrate. Well, either they didn't do it or they kept moving the target until it calibrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They kept.
So, which we've seen happen.
God, it's kind of scary. For Pete's sakes.
Yeah. I'm going to blame the weather because we've got some pretty high winds around here right now. So my Wi-Fi signal is great.
And that's, yeah. Because my last tenure at Nissan, they had that recall on the radar sensors. And I know that what it paid to do, you could not do it in the time frame. And I'm not opening up a bag of secrets, but I mean, there was some creative ways that those things got changed to fast track through the calibration after the fact.
Yep.
And I can tell you that the shop that we were supposed to be calibrated in, those floors weren't straight. They weren't level.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's like, ADAS is funny for me because, like, especially with, like, in the aftermarket, a lot of us don't even touch it. A lot of us don't even, like, know in the service information. I was looking at a Honda CR-V the other day, and it was like, to do the radiator, they want you to pull the bumper. And then it says it right in the thing, if you're pulling the bumper and it's equipped this way, there's a wave sensor that will have to be recalibrated. This CR-V was not configured with such. So it didn't matter how I got the rad out, right? It wasn't going to change anything. But so many of us probably pull off a bumper and don't even realize till it's off. Oh shit, there's a camera up there, right? Like, now what do I do?
Yep.
Well, they slap it back together and plug everything back in, and maybe, you know, no lights come on and it goes back down the road and everybody plays dumb. That's the part that drives me crazy, when it's like we're not doing enough when we're building our quotes and quoting our jobs and looking at our things of what are actually affecting. And then, like, if I don't want to sell the customer an ADAS calibration, I better make sure I find another way to get that part out of there without disturbing the ADAS, right? Yeah. Which then takes the warranty, takes the labor time, throw it in the trash, take the service information, throw it in the trash, figure out another way, do it without it. But don't just rip the part off, put it back on to get it done and go, The customer didn't, I didn't make the customer decided not to do the ADAS calibration. The customer decided because we found out after the fact, and we were already committed to fixing the radiator, and then it's like, oh crap, I got to call them up and go, guess what? It's going to be 2 more days now. I got to take it to a shop that wants to charge X amount of dollars to, calibrate. Not saying that they shouldn't charge that. That's what it should be. I've said for years that I hope, it sounds funny because it would put like some shops that do cals out of business. I wish we could get to where a lot of the cars just got smarter and they did it themselves without having to let an active calibration versus but you still got to pay somebody the time to do it. Right?
Yeah. It's like up here, especially when we get into like some of like the dynamic calibrations, because it eliminates the need for the space and the floors and the lighting. But then you run into issues of snow. What do you do when there's so much snow on the roads and you can't see the lines and that windshield needs to be calibrated? It's like, well, we can't do it because it can't see the lines. Or, we get so much sleep building up on that radar. It's like, guess what? Or we can't safely even drive the vehicle. So, you can't ship the car today like you wanted to because it can't be calibrated. It's just not physically possible to do it.
Yeah.
Or rains, days lots of rain, or we get stuck in traffic jams. And then at times out, it's like, all right, now we got to start all over again. It's just, I like the static better because we can control the environment. We know where to weigh if it's going to pass or fail. But
that's a great point, Liz. Thank you for that. Because my dumb butt is thinking, this is so silly. Like I can remember, because I can remember the first one I had to do on a Nissan as an older Nissan, change the rear view camera. And then I had to set up the targets. And the floor was just not crooked enough that I spent 2 days moving the targets around trying to get it, and keep giving me a different error. It turns out once I finally said to the boss and said, I'm done. Like, F this. I've been 2 days on it. And he told me, I'll pay you. Don't worry about it. And he did. We wheeled it down to the new section of the shop that was built recently with nice, flat, straight floors.
Yeah.
And the calibration did it in 10 minutes the first time.
Yeah.
And then that was like, for me, that was like, this is the most effed up system I've ever seen put on a car. Because Liz, with the camera, it worked, right? Like, we're talking just a camera. It worked, but it came up the message saying it turns on for a second and then it goes out because it's not calibrated.
Yep.
That drove me fucking crazy. Like, we're not talking about it. It didn't have any other warning in place to say somebody's about to rear end you or anything like that. It's just a camera. But the system still knew that it had a new camera in it and it hadn't been successfully calibrated. Yep. So I like that, what you were saying, though. That's a good point, that like you can control the variables when you're in a controlled room, controlled environment. That's a good point.
Yep. So
yeah. What do you think? So we kind of, when we talk about the used car problem being such a facet with our industry of where a lot of things, the challenges pop up, do we ever get ahead of that? Like, how do we do it?
I don't know how we would, because like there's always going to be people who prioritize the dollar over anything else. I think it's just the nature. There's always going to be those people who, like, it doesn't matter. They've made their dollar and that's all they care about.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the difficult parts, especially, during COVID again. Like, the used car market was absolutely insane because you couldn't get any cars. Mm-hmm. So I know people who bought cars that, used cars that were, they paid way more for than they would have a new car, but they needed a car. So they couldn't wait 8 months for that new car to come in stock. So they paid more for that used car than they would have a brand new one. And then, like, there's always that's, the sketchiness with that. For the used cars, like, I don't even want to go to a used car lot. Like, if I buy something for myself, I'm buying most of the time privately and just getting the safety done from somebody who I know or trust if I can't do it myself. So.
Right. But see,
there is good ones out there to say that but they're few and far between. And I have a trust issue with them. So.
I do too. Because when I was shopping for my last vehicle I purchased, which was going on 3 years now, I had to leave Kingston, drive all the way to Peterborough to find a Jeep that I wanted to buy. And like, how it is when you're shopping online, you can find all kinds of private sellers. You know what they are? They're shade treers or,
Oh yeah.
Curbsiders, right? They're selling cars that are not legit dealers, but they bought some stuff at the auction and, and I didn't want any part of that. And I had to go all the way to Peterborough to get what I wanted for the price. And everybody's like, there's cheaper Yeah, no, I'm not interested, because I can go to this person and I can buy it from them and I can see the service records. They sold it at that dealer 3 years. It's 2015. I bought it. You know, they sold it. It's a return customer for theirs. It's whatever. I didn't have to worry. That, from my background, I knew what I was getting then, right?
Yeah.
But I see it, like, people come into us all the time and they're like, I just bought this car as is. And I'm like,
oh,
shit, we haven't had one yet, Liz, that person's been able to buy as is that we've been able to pass. Too much structural damage, too much structural rot, you know?
Yep. And that's the scary part. It's like, there's so many things. I remember when I was helping out a friend, and they're like, oh, can you come look at this car with me? The person says, like, it's great, it's clean. So the car, it's clean inside. You look underneath, there's like a 3-inch hole in the floor pan. Like, no, but like, oh, the car is clean. Like, you can't safety that. I'm like,
no,
keep looking. But it's only the worst part is the car was only like 5 years old.
Sure.
It's like, no, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Cause that's just going to be like a world of like, no, don't do it. So, but.
And see, that drives me nuts, because it's like, you know, I know, and people hate it. I know, like, what did I look at yesterday? A 2017 Chevy Silverado with 111,000 kilometers on it that just started to have some little rust peeking through it was a white truck, little bleeding through the paint on the rocker on the driver's side, where they all go right under the cab corner.
Yep.
Where they've been going for 50 years, where they rot there.
Yep.
But underneath the truck, it has got all that dry, pokey, where if I push hard enough on the thing, I'm pushing through the panel. And if I probably find a couple spots on the frame and start to really, like, if I was to take, a pick hammer, I could probably push through it. And they're like, does the truck really need anything? And I'm like, yeah, it needed undercoating like in 10 years ago. And everybody goes, well, it's a 2016. It's a 10-year-old truck in Canada. Like, and there's somebody who has taken a truck and let it deteriorate to the point of where, because I know what's going to happen, he'll trade it. And, the dealer will probably flog it to the wholesaler, but the wholesaler, will buy that, put all that, smear stuff all over the dash, make the dash shiny, wax that truck up, spray some paint on there, and it's got a frame and some brake lines and fuel lines that are just about ready to let go.
Yeah.
And that drives me crazy. Yeah, of course we can.
Okay. Thanks.
Take a break. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So what's tell me the day-to-day, how does it work? What's your day-to-day situation with, like, the business and the company? How does it go?
It's like, well, day-to-day, I tend to float between our different locations as a licensed tech. So I kind of help out where we may need some extra diagnostic help with some of these, because they'll get quite challenging. Mm-hmm. Like, as a module fail, is there a communication error? So we're getting to a lot of network diagnostics. Or is there an airbag light on that need a little extra help with? Or are we doing a repair to the airbag system? Okay, then I'm, helping with that, being licensed. But like the day-to-day shop stuff, generally, like the customer will call our head office and they'll book it and dispatch it to the location it needs to go to. And they'll notify the technicians there, or like our ADOS technicians, on actual mechanics, and they'll pick up the car, they'll test drive it. We document the whole process start to finish. So right from pickup, before we even touch the car, we're taking pictures. It covers us and our customers. So if there's any issues, they know everything's backed up. And we've got proof of everything. We'll do a pre-scan to see what we're starting with. And then as we go through, we will clear everything out. We'll document the procedure. We look it up in service information, what the actual procedure is on every car. Again, things are always changing, so we need to stay on top of that, because, especially if it's a brand new car, or even sometimes they've even changed the procedure partway through, to make it, they've updated the system, so now they've kind of changed how they want it done, or the exact setup, how they get to that setup point. So we measure everything out. We'll do the calibration. If it fails, then we kind of get into why has it failed. We'll start looking, was the component installed correctly? Do we double check, triple check our setup to make sure we've actually done it correctly? There's some that are actually incorrect in service information, which is even more fun.
Oh.
So it's like, they should be correct. Most of the time it is, but sometimes we'll even then have to go back to the full on OE service information. and to see if that's right, to see if there's a discrepancy between all data or like the OE service information. So when we get into that, it kind of gets really complicated. Or when the parts have been replaced and it's replaced with the wrong part, and then there's a whole bunch of.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
My favorite was
Yeah, I remember at a Nissan dealer, the tech across the bay from me. It was a Hyundai product. I want to say like a Tucson Santa Fe or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it had come from the body shop. Not even one car we sold. We would do some work for the body shop, the independent body shop that was on the shared lot with us. And as soon as they did whatever they did to the side of the car, it had this ADAS fault in. And, the tech who was certainly, we're a Nissan dealer, it's a Hyundai, so he doesn't know. And he's going on, I don't even know what our scan tool or Snap-on scan tool was telling him as a code, but I mean, he didn't have a whole lot to go on. It was a newer car than what we're known to work on at the Nissan store in terms of ADAS. And anyway, it ended up being he spent, I don't know, the better part of a day off and on this thing, and it's like it keeps flagging for the left side driver's mirror, satellite or whatever. Doesn't tell him it's in the mirror.
Yeah.
He finally tracks it down. He goes, "Did they put a mirror on this car?" Yeah. Well, it's got a mirror on it. So he gets somebody now to call Nissan and say, for this VIN number, what mirror should be on this? And they give him that should be like this whatever satellite equipped mirror, $1,200. What mirror was installed? Oh, this regular nonchalant, eBay, Amazon piece of junk that's like a $200 mirror. So there's somebody in the insurance business not knowing and not quoting and not and I felt bad for the guy, but we're sitting there sticking around going like, why does that stuff have to happen? Like, why does that have to happen? Why do people that don't know what they're doing get to order parts for cars? And then, because like that body shop
sometimes
guy,
we've actually seen it too, with even right at the dealership level, they didn't know the proper part for the car.
And it's together.
We had a Twitter brand new.
He didn't know. He didn't
Tacoma
intend to mess
was
up
lifted from the factory.
Whoa, I didn't hear anything you said there. It was
you froze. Yeah, so I think I'm not sure where you left off. So you go ahead.
Well, I was just talking about how that technician over at the body shop, he didn't intend to be cheaper. He didn't intend to screw up that mechanic's day when the car, leaves the body shop and goes across the street to who handles their mechanical repairs. Right. And it's like, hey, it's got this ADAS thing. It was the chain of command broke down so many times into what's it here for? What's here for an ADAS? What was done to the car? I don't really know. I'll have to call somebody and ask. All that crap should be handled before it ever gets dispatched to somebody. Because we know what could have happened is if they'd actually had the communication, would have never even needed to go to a technician. You did what to the car? Oh, left rear, left front corner damaged. Pull out A pillar, pull out B pillar. Replace door, parts list, new mirror, ADAS fault, left. Hey, did you put the right mirror on? And it would have never had to be dispatched.
Yeah.
But because the chain of communication sucks, everybody, because again, it's going back to sometimes some salespeople. Like I saw him waste hours and he got paid. But it was hours wasted that probably were unbilled to the insurance company, whoever or whatever. All because somebody is like always trying to do this shit cheaper, and used car lots and body shops, right? Are some of the two people that most people in our industry will talk about, like in the independent side of shops that I don't want to deal with them. I do not want to deal with them. Don't want to deal with body shops. Don't want to deal with used car lots, right? Yeah. Like they're just always cheap.
Yeah. Like there's definitely some body shops that are trying to do the right thing, but then they're being like handcuffed by the insurance company.
Sure.
And some of them, it's exhausting to fight with them all the time, which again, there's been a lot of good people that I've seen even ready to leave the collision side of the industry just because they're just so tired of the games the insurance company is playing with them. Like I get everyone wants to make money off this, but at the same time, it's like when the insurance says, no, we're not paying for this. It's like, but the OE says you have to. And they say, well, no, we don't. And then there's that bickering back and forth. It's like, okay, well, here's your OEM documentation saying it needs to be done. Then give it to me in writing that you're not going to pay for it. But then like, oh, wait, no, now we'll pay for it because that will hold the insurance company liable instead of the body shop. And they don't want that.
No, because I'm just going to inform your customer that their policy holder will not do it properly and see how long that lasts until it's not on the 5 o'clock news. Yeah, 100%. That's how it should go. We should be playing hardball with these people a lot more than we are,
a lot of
because it's
shops
just
are
frankly like
afraid
that's
of
the
them
only
because
way.
now if they lose them
It's
as
a game
like
of
the
inches.
preferred
It's a
shop,
war of
they're afraid of losing that income and that money and the repairs.
inches on the field. Like that's how it should be played.
So
And yeah, it sucks.
it's a game, and it's
just like dealing
exhausting,
with
I'm sure, for
aftermarket.
everybody.
Yeah, we cracked up there again too.
Yeah.
So I think what I'll do with this, Liz, is we might have to, when you've got a day that's got better weather, might have to come in and record this again, if you don't mind.
Okay. Oh.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, because I don't want to. I'm knowing now that I'm like I got an hour in, and probably by the time we try and fix some of this stuff up, we're gonna have 30 minutes, and then we'll be too short to use it.
Yeah.
So when you have a better weather day, maybe next weekend or something like that, or if you can get to a different PC or different setup, we might have stronger Wi-Fi. Yeah. And then we'll do this again if you don't mind.
Yeah. I was like, mine's all hardwired anyway, but
yeah. I
think it's just the satellites or something going on outside, because normally it's been pretty good. So I'm like, okay, it should be good. That's if you're going to do it here. Because I know the Wi-Fi at the shop can be a little sketchy, which is supposed to be great, but I'm like, no, I'll do it at home because the internet connection's better. It's apparently not today.
Might be something to do with the satellite, because the cat is really infatuated on something. When you look over your left shoulder, the cat is infatuated with something. So, yeah. Did you get a chance to run into, when you're at Vision, Liz and Keith from L1 Diagnostics? Are you familiar with who they are?
I took one of Keith's course, actually.
Okay.
Keith did one of the courses that I took.
Yeah.
Which one was it?
He's coming up on he's coming up as an interview very soon.
Nice.
Before he went to Vision, he did an interview with me. But yeah, him and Liz are fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. I think I've just about interviewed everybody that works for L1 now, except for one one technician, but they're great. And they've been the same thing with you. And you're talking to me about like the ADAS stuff and what you've run into shops and stuff like this. I'm like, I've heard that Liz and Keith talk about this stuff before too. So I'm glad. I'm jealous as hell that you got to go to Vision. I really am, because it was. I'm hoping to be there next year. It's kind of that. Nice. It's kind of the perfect time to have one, because we're not into tire season yet. Like we're just starting to trickle back into it now. So if like they would hold it the same week every time we could go, I would be there. But the podcast has got to make a little bit more money before I can take as many trips as I want. So that's the goal though. Like, and I'm at a newer job. I've only been there since November, and so it's like even a question of how many times can I get away to do these trips. Depending on when they fall, it's not that hard if we're not in the busy time of the year. But like, I was going to ask you having a hard time finding technicians, because you were saying like you're a licensed tech going from location to location.
Yep.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
Yep. It's because because we're heavily electrical. Most technicians are like, no, we don't want. That's not what we want to do. So in that side of it, it's hard there, because most of them, like, they're, I think statistically in Ontario, I think it's like 55% of the trades workforce is retiring within the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a lot. It's like, and you start looking at the automotive, it's like, yeah, I can see that. So a lot of these older guys, if they're going to retire in the next couple of years, they don't care. Like, why would they put all this time into it and like just to be like done with it? Like, just give me the brake jobs instead. Like, whatever, send it to the dealership. Like, that's the biggest thing. Just send it to the dealership. It's ADAS dealership, where, it's network communication. We're not, send it to the dealership. So, but because we get into that, it's like, no, and also electrical diag is a bit of a different monster than like drivability diag or like engine diag. It's two different sets of like patience that you need.
When I think of like how many 20-year veterans I know that aren't good at diag, electrical or drivability, like it doesn't matter that you've been a 20-year vet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not going to fill the role of what somebody needs you to do every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's a different level of skill set. It's a critical thinking versus a repetition. I talked about, like, I had a long road trip yesterday with a friend. I were talking about, think about it like this. Everybody goes, well, it's just like doing puzzles. I said, Think about it like this. A traditional one-dimension puzzle is like, if I move the pieces all around eventually, I will get it together. And they all have paint on one side and nothing on the other.
Yeah.
And I know that at least this is the side up. And then I get the puzzle together. Look at a 3D puzzle now and tell me that like that's what this level of thing is. So I've worked with amazing guys that were phenomenal at a 3D puzzle. But if you put a roadmap in front of them and said, this is power and this is ground and show me where it ends up, they'd be like,
yeah,
right? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea. And so it's not even left brain and right brain. I think it's even more segmented into various categories within that. And it's tricky because like I suck at as a 3D puzzle type thing. If I take something apart on Monday and you ask me to put it back together on Thursday, I'm screwed. Like I can't remember. But like if you say to me, go diagnose that wiring problem, here's some, I'm good. No problem.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if I've ever done it before. It doesn't matter. Like it's just, yeah, here you go. That's what's going to happen. So, and I don't know why it is. I can't, but what I've seen people really excel with the 3D puzzle thing, they haven't been able to teach to me. And the way that I've been able to do the drivability and electrical side of reading, I can't seem to be able to teach it to them. It just seems like it gets like all messed up and then we can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 49. I'm still working at trying to be better at it.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the nature of it. We're all just trying to be a little bit better than we were yesterday. So
yeah, I struggle. Like I said, if I take it apart 4:00 before I go home and then I come in the next day and at 1:00 you say, here, go put this together. I've already done 2 other cars. I'm like, oh, this is probably not going to go today. Cause I get like, you know, it's one thing if it's one part, but like I had the CRV, I had the rad out of it. I had the PCM moved, I had the battery out of it. I had all to change like the pipe that goes from the front cover over to the thermostat housing. And I had all these parts taken out of it to get the rad out and then to get this pipe, the O-rings changed. I was trying to remember like, where did all these bolts go? Like, how does this, I shit the bed on the time. It was terrible. Like it was just, my boss didn't care. We got it done. But I'm like, if I have the parts there and they're like, here, go do this. No problem. Hitting the time, easy. If I have to split the day and walk away, I'm screwed. Unless it's a brand I've done 100 times, right? Then it's a different thing. Like I have to do the job. First time and only time under repair, forget it. Terrible.
Yeah.
All right, I will let you go.
Okay.